Awesome. I think it's working. Okay, cool. You get the questions up. So the first one is, what is positive testing and negative testing?
Sure. It's pretty much as it sounds. Positive testing is you have a specific outcome that you're trying to achieve, and to validate. And negative is again just what it sounds like. You're essentially disproving a positive.
Yeah,
So
nice.
if I've got a feature that does X functionality, and I'll run a negative test to validate that, say, Y functionality does not occur.
Awesome. The next one is, how do you structure a typical test case?
Sure. So my test cases. In fact, I write the majority of the test cases for my team. So I do quite a bit of that. So I structure test cases typically as a single point validation. So because we do have a fairly robust automation team. And so the single point validation tests are designed so that they can also be automated at some point in the future, or concurrently. So typically we try to validate one specific item within a functional requirement in that test. So the actual testing themselves, I will I'm pretty detail oriented, let's say, when I write tests. So I start from the top. If it's something that's, I'll give you just an example from my world, is the testing on our website. So I start with, access the web test environment. Um, and then I give them a specific scenario. So if it's, they have to do a flight search, conduct a flight search as a one-way flight search with one passenger outside of 24 hours, et cetera, walking them through the entire path until we get to the actual validation point. And then I'll have them validate that, and that's typically the end of the test. And then we also run end-to-end tests to validate that. Yeah, hey, if I press this button on the bags page and I add some bags, well, I also want to make sure too that when I go past the bags page, that I'm still seeing them in our shopping cart, or I get onto the payment page, that you see that the bags were correctly added, the prices match, and then committing the actual booking itself, validating then on the post booking path that you see all the same things, and then also on our backend software too. So we've got sort of two routes that we go with testing there.
The next one is, when do you do a regression test and smoke test?
Yeah, sure. So smoke testing is typically that's initial testing. So if you get some functionality, you get a new build on whatever you're working on. Like I said, in my case, web or mobile application. Anytime we get a new code, we'll do a basic smoke test. So smoke test is again just kind of what it sounds like. You just kind of run through all the functionality on a sort of surface level, and try different combinations of things to see that in general that the like I said, in my case, the website is working correctly. All the functionality is working correctly. Regression testing, we use that typically when you're integrating new software into existing software. So if introducing some new code into existing code, we run regression testing to validate that all the existing functionality is still working correctly, that the new code didn't break the old code.
Cool. And then you already answered this one before, but what is end-to-end testing?
Yeah. So again, I love QA because a lot of it's pretty self-explanatory. So it is as it sounds. Yeah, you run a test literally from this very start to the very finish. And as you're running, as you're completing each step, you're validating along the way that all of the all of the steps are still functioning correctly. Whereas, like I talked about with single point validation, you kind of go from A sometimes to Z without kind of fiddling with all the letters in the middle of the alphabet. Whereas end to end, you're concerned with each letter of the alphabet, basically. In a situation of mine with a website, we also, and it's an airline, so we've got a lot of kind of back end software that we have to validate. So we want to validate that, that a guest can make a booking from A to Z. They can then go in and pull their booking up after they've created their booking or check in, whatever the case may be. And then once they've done all that and made their transactions, then we also go through and, like I said, in the back end and validate that all the changes and all the additions that the customers made have made it to our site and everything's talking correctly.
Great. And then the last question is, can you name some advantages of manual testing over automation testing?
Sure. I think I think you'd say primarily the benefits to manual testing is the human element, right? So it's kind of that wild card element. You can kind of call an audible a little bit more so with audible testing, whereas with automated testing, you get the volume, right? So you can knock out a lot in one shot. But with manual testing, you're able to go kind of a little more in depth. And there's just some areas that automation can't cover. A lot of times they can't cover the UX portion of a design. So, so if something's not formatted correctly, automation typically can't, at least in my experience anyway, automation can't pick that up. So, so you need manual testers to go and actually look at a site and see that, man, everything's working correctly. It's formatted as it's supposed to. Things are spelled correctly. So there's a lot there that manual testing covers that automation just isn't great at. And like I said, it is that human element where I can go in and make a change or do some sort of edge case that you typically don't necessarily think of in automation testing.
Awesome. Great. Well, those are all the questions. So I'm going to stop the recording right now.
Okay.